Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Boost Up. John, Dave, myself. We're going to look back over Leinster's loss against Connacht down in Galway, all the other Pro 12 stuff, and look forward to our game against Munster at the weekend. So, boys, suffered another defeat down in Galway, 7-6.
Becoming a bit of a habit, isn't it?
3 and 4 games. The loss itself doesn't worry me so much in terms of, Connacht are a good side. They're playing at home. They have it's a bit like, do you remember when Bradford Bulls used to have their own ground was quite unique because of its physical attributes, and it's the same with the sports ground. So
was it? The hill or the wind?
Yeah, the hill or the wind. So to a certain extent, what does worry me is that it's part of a pattern. Whereas games that give Leinster an opportunity to move on to the next level are being lost.
Well, twice in a row. We lost to the two form teams in the league.
Well, no, so we lost to the two. We lost to the two form clubs in the league. We lost to the form team in the league, and we lost to the one of the other form clubs' third team.
Yeah, I don't know. We had a stronger team out than both Glasgow and Connacht. We should have, on paper, we should have won both games, even though they're away. Both teams lost a few players during the game as well. So, again, advantage us. But a few brain-dead tactics on our part, in fairness. Everybody's commented on the box kicking. But in the second half, when we should have been kicking, we had a big pack. We had all the strength, in the forwards. And we should have been down in their 22 the whole time. Did anybody kick us down there in the second half? Not really.
No.
There was no tactical kicking.
But we did have a question, because I know what your next question is going to be, and this kind of foresaws. How in the name of Janie did Eason not have a chat with Luke McGrath about kicking into a gale? It didn't work the first two times, and it seems like a different approach might have been advised in the third attempt in a row, where the panel agreed that this was not the losing of the match, it was a poor indication of McGrath's ability. I'm not sure if it's a poor indication of McGrath's ability, but I think it's a poor indication of our tactics. And the senior players didn't seem to do anything to change that. And that's what the question's getting at, and that's what I'd be worried about.
Yeah. There was an interesting, at the start of the match, they interviewed the two coaches, and Leo was asked, first of all he said, well, it's all about winning the collisions. Then he says, we're going to have to play against the hill and the wind in the first half. Surely, if you know what you're expecting, you might sort of vary your tactics. Pat Lambs, on the other hand, was after the match, he said, well, boys know my views on running into people or running into space. It just goes to show the two tactics approach from both coaches, or the philosophies that the two teams have at the moment. But going back to the question, if you look at, say, even the out halves, AJ was had to go and claim citizenship of his mother to get international rugby with America, and play for a small Mickey Mouse team in Atlanta or wherever it was. Ian Madigan has got, 30 caps maybe for Ireland.
Certainly, I think he got 100 for Leinster.
And is going off on big money to go and play in France. And if you looked at both of them and you said, which one of them is controlling the game better? It was AJ. AJ played, okay, he's based in Galway, but he's only down there 6 months. But he's going to adapt to the conditions down there because he played them far better than Madigan did.
Even more telling indictment is that when AJ McGinty came off, Connacht didn't have a single other out half on their roster, and they had to put in a former Munster Academy centre play out half, and he still controlled the game better.
Still control the game.
And that's the telling thing. There's a tactic. Leinster have opportunities to do stuff, and have had opportunities at various points in the season, and haven't taken any of those opportunities. They really haven't. I mean, and the big fear for me is it's not a fear for me. But what happens now if Ulster beat Connacht on Friday night? Will the Leinster team kind of have
the foot off the pedal,
have a little brown dribble when they against Munster? I mean, we're 50-50 against teams in the top four this season. I don't know. It's not.
I don't know. And there's a lot of rugby, as we all know, is a very mental game. It's played in the mind more than anywhere else.
And that's my worry.
And the last two games won't have given us any great confidence. The only thing we got to go was we integrated a few Ireland players back in a little bit. We didn't get Sexton back in, so he's coming in cold into this game, and there's a lot on his shoulders. He's got to pull a lot of shit out of the fire. I'd be more worried about the mental side of the
But you look at their scrum. I
game.
mean, not all scrums.
Munster are on a high. Okay, they only beat Zebre,
But there was a lot of scrums that we were demolished in. Like, and I gave our backs crap ball because we were hurtling back. You know, some of the ball that Ruddock might have had to clean up at the back, or that McGrath had to deal with. But also, like,
shows you what a technical game thing the scrum is.
But psychologically,
I mean, even in scrums we won, right? Our scrum halves were both completely outfoxed by Marion. He messed both of them up. Even when we won clean ball
you
and good ball,
a great penalty out of him throwing the ball into
you might get one of them. But I mean, he completely dominated both our scrum halves at the back of the scrum. Even when we were getting good go forward ball, we couldn't do much about it because he just made shit of it.
Yeah, he's a good little player.
Yeah,
he really is.
Now, I be of the opinion. A lot of people kind of have. Luke McGrath seems to be one of these Marmite players. Guys either seem to really, really appreciate him or really. I think he's a really good player. I think he could be a significant player for the future. Sure. He's not there yet, but you know, the path along he is every step along the development path. But he didn't have a good game.
No.
He didn't by any stretch of the imagination.
No. What I really thought was amazing about Connacht, especially at the end, when you say they'd no out half, they're missing a lot of players. They backed their skill set. They backed their hands. They were playing against us from about their halfway line, and they kept possession of the ball and went all the way back to about 10 metres from their own line. In I think it was a 20 phase. Like, they kept the ball, and they were losing ground the whole time, but they still kept the ball. They still trusted their skills. They didn't kick the ball away and into the wind. They just, they knew they were going to retain possession, and they did. And they ended up on their own line, kicking the ball out after again resisting the temptation to kick and running through a few phases just before because the last couple of phases there was still time on the clock. So as soon as the time ran out, your man kicked it out over the end line to Multis.
But the other side of that is that we had multiple phases ourselves, and we managed to go from their 10 metre line to the 22, you know.
Only a few times.
No, but I mean backwards, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
And because we had no penetration, no depth. We didn't look like we had any sort of, wit or little bit of cleverness that would break down their line.
But where we look comfortable is defending. We look comfortable, like we drove them back.
Well, that's great, John.
We had a good line. I'm not saying it's good or bad.
If you're the best defensive team in the world, right, and you never score, the best you can do is only ever draw a game.
I'm picking out the two big points as I see them in the team. One team really trusted their hands, the other team really trusted their defence.
Mm-hmm.
And 99% of neutrals would rather watch a team that trusts their hands rather than a team that trusts their defence.
The thing is,
you need both, but
if you trust your defence, but it breaks down even just once, and you get an unlucky bounce like we did, like Connacht did, that still means you have to score 3 times to compensate. And we're having problems scoring 3 times, as it is, without having to do it coming from behind. And that's
the second game in a row we haven't scored a try.
Yeah, and Andy Crawford actually asks views on our attack and the coaching of our attack. Do we need new attack coach, and if so, who? I don't know who. I don't know if we need a new one, but something needs to be done. I would see.
But for the last number of years, Curvin was in charge of the academy. They played a nice brand of rugby. They were kind of a sexy, backs-orientated team. Mm-hmm. He's moved up into the
big boys,
into the big leagues now, but it doesn't seem to be clicking for him, or the backs don't seem to be. Now I think a lot of that as well is we seem to be chopping and changing. We've won one team, obviously because of the World Cup, and then they were back, and then they were off for the Six Nations and so on. But I mean, the whole thing. We're going to talk about it in the Munster match. God, it's all on Johnny Sexton's shoulders. He's going to drag this team around, but he can't do it all on his own. Of
course not.
No, and Johnny Sexton is, as you were saying earlier, he's a huge counterweight to what's gone before. But he can't, as you say, he can't do it all on his own. And we talk about you talk about the inconsistency and availability for the coaches, but that's always been the way with Leinster. Yeah. And if you look at when Leinster were successful, we mention almost every week, Leinster would take 19 out of 20, 18 out of 20. What have we taken this Six Nations period?
Well, until the last game, we were doing brilliantly, and the only like we did get almost maximum points in what was the Six Nations period. We had a refixed game on, which was.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Okay, that kind of skews.
So we got 18 or 19 out of 20, but since then
we haven't. I mean, and you look at who we scored our tries against, even in attack. I mean, we got 11 against Zebre. How many tries have we scored this year?
That was it, is it?
We got 11 against Zebre. We got
39 tries.
We got a bunch of other tries against Ospreys, who are, fourth from bottom, fifth from bottom, fourth from bottom.
Yeah.
The Ospreys are having a terrible. We probably have to come back and discuss that. They're having a terrible.
Yeah, they really are.
So we're not going. It's not going well in attack. And somebody mentioned today on Leicester fans, and I looked it up. We scored half as many tries in Europe from play as Zebre. Or sorry, Treviso. Treviso scored twice as many tries in Europe, in the European Cup. They're in the European Cup as we did from play. They got 8, we got 4. We also got a penalty try, but I'm talking about
fairly damning statistics.
Yeah.
No wonder we only won 1 out of 6 games.
Yeah.
That's Treviso-esque standard, really.
It is, yeah. But Europe, we're drawing a veil over Europe for the season.
Yes, we are. What Europe?
We're not going to get dragged into that one again. But Pro 12 boys, last 2 performances aside, until we went to Glasgow, we had lost 3 games in the Pro 12 all season. So we have a lot in the bank, and we're still
second.
We're still possibly best placed team in the league for a home semi. Now we've got to go and do it on the pitch, notably against Munster this week.
And Ulster the week after.
And Ulster 2-3 weeks after.
Yeah.
But, it's in our hands still. Completely in our hands. We're a point behind Connacht, who have some very tough games coming up. The fixtures.
4 behind Connacht.
Actually, we're a point ahead of the Scarlets. Are we 2 ahead of the Scarlets? Oh, okay, sorry. If you look at the fixtures coming up for all the teams, like Ulster and Munster, Munster don't have an Italian team left. They've had that glory already last week. Ulster have Zebre, we have Treviso, Connacht also have Treviso, and Munster have Scarlets and Edinburgh up last, who are kind of fellow contenders for Edinburgh have a hope of Europe, and
the one advantage we have is that we're in our position. I don't want to use it. We'd say, for what sake of want of a better word, honestly, because when it comes down to a comparison of the teams, if teams are even on points, for example, we'll, as things stand, if we win, if we beat Munster 4 points on Saturday and Connacht lose without a bonus point to Ulster on Friday,
we've more wins.
We've more wins. Because it's wins rather than try bonus points are the first differentiator if things are level on points, and it's the same with Clonetty as well. We've won more wins than Clonetty.
Well, also both Munster and Ulster have to play Connacht.
Yeah.
And obviously that means Connacht have to play both of them. So there's a lot of inter-pro banging around to be done. We have to play Ulster.
There's also another fixture that if you say Munster are beaten by us, and if Edinburgh beat, I think it's Zebre, which is a good chance that they will. If they get 5 points in that, they actually go level on points with Munster.
Do they? Wow. I didn't realise it was quite that tight. Yeah. Their second last game, they Edinburgh have to play us and Munster 2 rounds in a row, so there's a gap in between every week. But
the thing that would worry me, speaking just a totally different subject, if I were a Connacht fan, is how much the Connacht team celebrated that win.
Possibly. I think the biggest thing that they might have to worry about is no out halves and the 6-day turnaround. So I'm not saying it's a gimme that you're going to, but the odds are stacked in absolute favour of Ulster. I mean, they are in big trouble at the moment. Like they've lost. I think they've lost 3 of their last 4 matches. The wheels could possibly come off.
Well, do you know what Ulster are? Ulster are a bicycle with a slow puncture, because it's been leaking air ever since the Heineken Cup final in 2012. Right, and they keep pumping it up, and it goes for a little bit, and then it starts losing air again. They have a good bit of a European campaign, and something happens, and they lose air. And they have a good bit of a something campaign, and something happens, and they lose air. And they've been losing air ever since that match, And changing, they're on their 3rd coach.
Yeah.
In 4 years?
That was Brian McLaughlin's last game.
That was Brian McLaughlin's last game. Then Anscombe took over, and that ended quite uglily. And now they've got Les Kiss in charge. They had Neil Doak as in charge. So they've got, there's the whiff of Aston Villa about them.
We all thought Lester Kissinger was going to turn them around, and maybe he will, but...
Yeah, you have to kind of give him a full...
Well, also he's got Charles Piatow and could see it coming in at the end of the season, so that's going to be a bit of a fillip for them. But this year, it's them, Munster, and there's a few people slugging it out. Glasgow look like almost certainly get in with 3 Italian teams to play.
Glasgow had a bad start to the season, right?
But they're making up for it.
Yeah, and the thing that everyone was worried about Glasgow was they have a great first 15, but what do they have below that?
Lots of spirit.
Turns out they've got lots and lots below that. They mightn't have the greatest name players or the most experienced players, but they're good, gutsy, talented footballers.
Thankfully, the Fijians are starting to leave from the point of view.
But but they seem to be replacing them with quite good players, even. I mean,
well, they seem to have. Gregor Townsend seems to have some similarities to Pat Lam in terms of the spirit he has in the team and the way he has them playing, and he has them. It's a mindset thing. Everybody harps on about Pat Lam getting the ball for every player and making sure they had it with them and got them all to do tricks with it, and even the front rowers are ball handling, which is what we're crying out for.
But I think that sort of, I just think, like, say, for instance, from their point of view, when you look at the way that they play, they seem to be given they've been given sort of leeway to make the pass, to try and play out of possession, play out of the tackle, to keep the ball alive, and they're not penalised. Like, it's not going to work all the time. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to have knock-ons. They're going to fumble it in a situation where you just hold on to the ball and kick it off the pitch.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, look at maybe Ireland under Schmidt, or the way we've played, not necessarily, but like the way doesn't seem to be given the players the trust to try things, or there's the narrative of, oh God, the players are so afraid of the bollocking that they'll get on Monday that they're afraid to try anything, as opposed to the way Lam is getting them to play, which is back yourself and give it a lash.
Yeah, and you said it. Said it in the interview. Run at space rather than running at.
The only thing I'd say about that is there was a very similar attitude in Leinster when Cheika and Noxie were in charge, and ultimately the way we played cost us titles. I wonder if Munster or if Connacht don't win, will he have the bravery to continue with that? That would be the litmus test, if you like. Because remember, the difference between Pat Lam and Schmidt. Okay, Schmidt had an infinitely larger budget than Lam ever had, but Schmidt won stuff, and Lam hasn't yet. What we'll see is how he reacts to winning or not winning, as the case may be.
Well, Lam hasn't.
Because there's an expectation.
Well, there is now.
That's what I mean. There is now.
No, I don't think there's any expectation on them. But what they have done, every time somebody has said they have a huge game coming up next weekend,
they've won it.
They've Leinster. They've got, they're playing Munster down in Thomond Park. They've won it. They've, beaten Leinster in not the first time they've done it down in Connacht. They're going to Ulster. No one's giving them a chance again.
1960 was the last time they won there.
But no one's giving. I think it's an uphill battle for them because
no out of half,
and obviously the 6 days, and as you said, the emotional energy that they spent after that game, and possibly the way they said, I'm not sure they could go in a lash, but certainly doing lap of honours and all the rest of it. But why not? Like, an awful lot of the time, you often hear, especially players that are retired, say, God, I never really enjoyed my career. Because it's all about the next game, and it's okay. O'Gara saying, the best part of it, or O'Driscoll says, is the 15 or 20 minutes sitting in the dressing room before you take off your boots and you go into the shower, and then it's back to work the next day, and you don't get any.
But at the same time, they were the same boys who would not let any of their teams do any lap of honour before a trophy was in the bag.
I know, but maybe
but they learned that the hard way.
But maybe when it's when you're 27 and when you're 37, there's a difference in what you think back on your career.
Of course.
Well, possibly. I just think that it's at a certain point reality intrudes, and it's how you deal with that. In terms of, when I say reality, I mean either you get successful and you want to retain that success, or you don't get successful, you want to do something to make sure you are successful. That's how you go about it. That would be the test.
But last year, Connacht had the most successful season ever. Right?
Mm.
I mean, you're talking about the very extremely low base that they've come from. Last year, they got 50 points in the league, which was an enormous amount of points, considering where they have come from. Like, they were in the same bracket as the Dragons, as Zebre and maybe Treviso. You know, the four of them were kind of fighting for it.
Mm-hmm.
Then they kind of finished mid-table, not quite good enough to get into the European Cup. But
Wasn't that long ago? Glasgow were down there as well, you know, maybe 5 years ago.
exactly. And then this year, I think they're on, is it 67 points at the moment?
Yeah,
63.
63.
So with 4 more games to play, like if they don't win another game this season, they have had a fantastic year.
And they will.
They've made. I presume.
Oh, yeah.
They'll get 70 points.
I
I
presume
guarantee
they've
it.
made it into Europe at this stage. I'm not sure of the maths. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Just mean like that's their goal when they set out the season. It wasn't to win.
No, that's base camp, like that's definitely
Yeah,
it.
to think that they could be denying Ulster a chance to play in the European Cup is phenomenal.
I think more likely they're denying Cardiff and Ospreys.
Maybe so.
But
We don't know where it's
that's
going.
the reason why I said it before. The reason why the IRFU tooled up Connacht was to cut out Wales too.
Yeah.
That's why they did it. I mean, that's Wales' reward for
That's the
backing
goal. It's not in the bag yet that we get 4 provinces into Europe, but it's looking pretty good. You know, Connacht, like you say, have already qualified. Leinster, it's pretty hard to see them come below 6 from where they are. Ulster, they have an Italian team coming up fairly safe. Munster would be, you know, we might not be laughing next week, but Munster is a big rival, I suppose, as Edinburgh for top seed. Edinburgh are the only people really that can come in, you know, because Glasgow are coming in anyway, as I said.
Yeah.
So Munster have Edinburgh at home. We have Edinburgh at home. You know, balance probability. Munster are in Europe, so you know it's looking good for 4 teams from this island in Europe 1 next year.
Oh, I'd be sure of it. Well, no, I wouldn't. I'd be certain of 3 anyway.
You'd have to get 3,
and I'd lean towards 4 in terms of just looking at the points and the fixtures and stuff coming up.
Yeah, I'd say it's likely.
If a team is going to fall off the island of Europe 1, who's it going to be? If.
Well, it's obviously going to be Ulster or Munster, and to be honest, I don't see either of them falling that far. I just don't. I don't see either of them missing out.
The playoffs then. Who do we forward from the playoffs at this stage?
It's Munster, Ulster and Scarlets for the last place, and Connacht, Glasgow and Leinster for the top 3 in no particular order. At the moment, you'd probably say Glasgow 3rd, and one of Munster, Ulster, Scarlets in 4th, but that could all change. We lose to Munster at the weekend, that all changes.
Well, that brings us on nicely, John, to that match in the Aviva on Saturday. They beat us last year, lads. And they beat us very well.
Yeah.
Like they milled our scrums, demolished
We
us.
were very poor.
We were.
I mean, to a certain extent, I think between the jigs and the reel, that was the game where the lads sat back in the committee room with a cigar and brandy and thought, we'll have to ask Mr. O'Connor what exactly he's doing.
That
Where he
match
sees
was
himself
in
going.
December, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Well,
No, it was in November.
November.
I just think Munster are kind of building something. They had 6 starters in the last Irish squad. They've got Stander going really well, Conor Murray back, and a lot of their younger guys, the Ronan O'Mahony's of this world, for example, are playing. And Jack O'Donoghue's are playing well. They've got Earls and Zebo. They've got all these guys fit. They've got a decent bit, and they're coming off. Okay, it's only
They have 2
February.
players shutting down, and that stops Munster.
Murray
And
and
Stander.
CJ.
That's it. Everything they do goes through those 2 guys. Like, there's other guys that take advantage of, like Zebo and Earl.
Zebo can come in at first receiver. Zebo, you know.
Yeah, but you have to get the ball from someone.
Well, he does, yeah.
Yeah, you shut those 2 guys down, and that's it. Because they're great players, right? Stander showed during the Six Nations what a great player he is. Conor Murray is a great player.
You've changed your view.
Yeah,
I've changed your tune there.
when the information in front of me changes, I change my view. Stander has shown what a player he is. Conor Murray is the best scrum half in the Northern Hemisphere. If you take them out of it, what else is there in that Munster team? And how else can the other good players, Zebo,
Tommy O'Donnell.
Tommy O'Donnell, Keith Earls, Saidi, how did they function without what 8 and 9 produced for them? And we saw the answer to that to a certain extent in Thomond Park. They don't.
Well, big words, Dave.
Well, no, that's, I mean, at the end of the day, in every match, you come down to stopping. I mean, that's how Munster play. Munster's game is based around those two guys. It really is. I mean, you can you imagine? You think of a Munster game which what really wasn't.
Well, I mean, come on, we know that they're not blessed with a huge amount of talent.
I'm not saying that's an unusual thing. Our game is based around a limited number of players.
What
as
they
well.
have to do to stop Leicester's great attack that has scored so many tries in the last
That's
few
it.
games.
Yeah, I'd say just let them have the ball.
You know, so
Let the backs have it. Well, just already said that was a tactic of Leinster and the Joseph when we played Munster. Munster could have as much ball as they wanted as long as it was slow ball. And I'd suggest Munster would be quite happy to impose the same tactic on Leinster.
Mm-hmm.
Well, will our defeats over the last couple of weeks kind of galvanise us? Like it's getting to the stage where we have to win. Well, we have to win this game.
Mm-hmm.
The other side is Munster have to win this game as well. Not just like, you know, it's probably a given that they're going to qualify for Europe at this stage, but to get into the playoffs, like they're perilously close there.
I think the result on Friday night will have a huge take on this game as well.
Yeah, if Ulster win, it takes the pressure off top of the table because Connacht are going to run away with it if they beat Ulster. They've Munster up next, then Treviso, and then they've Glasgow at home on the last day. So, you know, Connacht are like they're expected to lose in Ulster. You know, I wouldn't say you get any odds on Connacht winning.
I would suggest that in the last 6 matches that they've won,
we've said that every time.
Yeah.
Well,
if Connacht had an out half, I'd expect them to beat Ulster, but they don't. Not that I'm aware of anyway. So
that in the 6-day turnaround, we've said it a few times already.
Having said that, how that affects the Leinster-Munster game is if Connacht lose, it gives an opportunity and puts pressure on Leinster because it's a chance to go top.
Yeah.
With Ulster winning, it puts pressure on Munster because that tightens things up around there.
And Leinster, in fairness.
And Leinster as well.
We'll be
so there's pressure from above and below.
Yeah.
If it goes the other way, it's a different story. But
it is a very exciting finish to the league this year. Though. I mean, for a neutral, especially if you don't have a horse in the race, it's such it's so open.
I think Munster will attempt to attack Leinster's lineout because their lineout is always really well organised.
Yeah.
And ours isn't. I think they'll attack our line out. I think they'll try and go for our scrum. I don't think that'll succeed.
Chisholm is out as well for the rest of the season.
He is,
concussion.
Yeah. I think they'll go for our scrum. I don't think they'll succeed though. We've been unfortunate with our scrum. We haven't had a bad scrum. We've been unfortunate with it. I don't think it'll work for them though.
It's never been convincing. It's never been a real weapon.
And then it's the battle of the back row.
Well, you're going to bring Ross back in. Now Ross he'll be rock steady.
And you'd have McGrath.
But he's not going to destroy their scrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Presumably McGrath's going to start over Keane Healy. Like Keane Healy he just looks...
He's just not playing well this year. No.
Yeah, like...
I just don't think he's right physically. I don't think he's ever got quite to 100% fit. I think that's the main problem.
I would agree with that.
And there's probably a hint of Luke Fitzgerald about him as well. He's overthinking it and over-trying and you know, it's just not working out for him. He's trying too hard, maybe. Yeah. He needs to relax into it a bit.
In Thomond Park, Leinster,
still in there.
Leinster won the battle of the back row. That stopped. It stopped CJ Stander getting front foot ball.
Going to be a big test then, presumably for Van der Fleer, who's presumably going because you can't rely on.
He's the product Van der Fleer.
You can't rely on O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
There, you know. I mean, we all know how good he is.
He's not far away, I believe, either. But
he's not going to be. He's not going to be.
Certainly won't be this week.
The question for Munster is what will be the composition of the back row? We assume O'Donnell will be there. We know Stander will be in there, but where will Stander play?
8, I'd say.
Will he play 8 or will he play 6? And will they play Copeland at 8? Because they've no Peter O'Mahony. Will they go with Jack O'Donoghue in such? Maybe do they want
a bit of experience?
Yeah.
But then it was Van der Fleer's.
Yeah. So that's the question. It's all about the balance in the back row.
If I was Munster, I'd have Copeland on the bench and Jack O'Donoghue at 6. He's a cracking player, and Tommy O'Donnell and then CJ at 8. But hey, I'm not Anthony Foley.
It's going to be interesting, but that's where the game is going to be won and lost. Because, to be perfectly honest, as they are currently playing, I'm not sure either backline has much of a wit to be able to break the other down. We're playing very poorly. I mean,
once again, Ringrose looks exciting,
Yeah.
doesn't he? The thing is,
Paul wasn't getting to him.
Paul's not getting.
yeah,
Theo,
the ball's
I
not
feel
like
like
positive.
Theo is fantastic going forward, and in a very limited role of taking the ball on.
And
God, he nearly refused to pass the ball.
Yeah, well, if you get on if you get on an offload
Yes.
from him, you're flying. But
Exactly.
he hasn't been given the offloads. He's been just dying with the ball quite a lot. So I know
Interesting to read. Like, I mean, it's been well flagged, but that Eddie Jones was hinting that he'd be
straight in there. Yeah.
interesting.
Well, to a certain extent, I mean, he'd be there in the November internationals when almost everyone would be called up at one stage or another.
That's it.
I can see them being used for him because they have a lot of similar-ish players, but they've only got really two kind of busters, and that's him and Tuolangi. You know, so there could be a use for him because Tuolangi's been pretty brittle in recent years. So, you know, I think he's a good player. And I think that if you use him right, he can reap great rewards. He's been very good for us since he's come into.
No, he has.
He hasn't.
But
Like,
I'm just. Look, we've been
it
blessed.
was frustrating to watch in that game
Like,
last week.
No,
Could you imagine Gordon Darcy, right? Now, we've watched Gordon for 12 or 15 years, one of the best players ever to wear a blue jersey for us. And he was a much smaller man than Theo is, but he would try and constantly offload. You know what I mean? He just offered so much more.
Darcy was one of those guys. Darcy was a bit like, well, he was very similar to O'Driscoll in that guys who played beside either of them looked better.
Yeah.
Because they were so intelligent. They realised what the guy. So we say, I still think that the best performance that manager Lange put in recent years was on the Lions tour when he played with Brian O'Driscoll.
Mm-hmm.
Because
And Jerry Roberts 4 years before.
because O'Driscoll knew what these guys, what their best skills were, and brought them out of them. Because he was such a good player, and Darcy's the same. And Darcy and O'Driscoll fed off one another. So I think if Ringrose was playing beside Darcy, we'd see much more benefit out of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's not. He can't. So why aren't our coaches working away
He will be
to
playing
get Ringrose
beside-
and Theo functioning well together?
He will be playing beside someone next year.
Yeah,
It would be fairly exciting.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, great. But that's not going to happen.
But even at that, it was one of the
We borrowed
small.
him.
It was one of the small, chinks of light in that performance last week. It was such a dullard performance, but the one small chink of light in it, I thought, was Ringrose, because every time he looked to get on the ball, he looked exciting.
Yeah, with or without the ball, he looks good. You know, he's just.
And I know we're kind of building him up and wanting to be the next O'Driscoll, but
He's got that thing that all the best players have, time on the ball. He's just when he gets the ball, he knows what he's going to do with it. It looks like everybody else just slowed down a little bit. I think it's in thought rather than actual physical speed, because he just.
Well, look, at this point we may as well have the gummy Venus de Milo playing outside centre because we're not putting the ball into his hands. You know, it makes no damn difference how good Ringrose is, because for whatever reason, we haven't had a lot of Johnny. And Johnny is again like O'Driscoll, like Darcy, an intelligent player, knows how to get the best out of the guys around him. But Ringrose being as good as he is in those circumstances when he's got the ball, if you look at, he rarely gets the ball he's got the ball in a situation beneficial to him maybe once since Christmas. And that was against Munster, and look what he did with it. But that was him, as he usually is, in the right position, but somebody actually putting the ball, giving him that opportunity, and he hasn't had those opportunities. And until he does get those opportunities, he is just at the moment lipstick on a pig.
Look at his kick and capture against Glasgow.
Yeah.
And it wasn't his fault that the try wasn't scored from that. He did everything he had to do and did it perfectly. He got the ball away at the end of it as well.
just blew it 4-1 or whatever it was. 5-2.
It wasn't capitalised on. So if we can bring him more into the game, we've more chance.
There's a good question in from Mark Kennedy, who asks about one-to-one battles. Which ones are the most interesting? I think we already talked about the back row, which is more of a 3-on-3 battle. He wants to see Zebo versus Kircher, simply because he thinks Zebo looks very good versus weaker opposition. We get shown up versus stronger teams. whereas he sees Kirshner as more of an honest pro. He's really interested in seeing who comes out on top. The thing with Zebo is Zebo looks better against weaker teams because Zebo has a certain skill set that sometimes is easier to operate against weaker teams because they give you a bit more space.
Well, yeah.
Whereas better teams are more hard up in your face. When Zebo's on it, like when he's really focused and switched on,
Fabulous.
it doesn't matter if the team's strong or weak, he can do stuff against it. The problem is, how often is he really, really on it?
Yeah, we've always criticised him about his tendency to drift off during games, and he does it in every game, unfortunately. But
maybe some players are kind of,
he is.
like, you can see the type of man he is, that maybe he just needs to be nurtured, needs to be, like, now that he's no longer kind of a peripheral player within Ireland, he's the starting fullback in the Six Nations, maybe, and he's gone on a Lions tour. He's, perhaps maybe they're going to play him on a fullback where he wants to play.
Does
he has the
fullback?
I don't know. He's played there for Ireland. I mean, it's more like if you play fullback, you're going to get more ball. You're going.
You have the whole pitch in front of you.
Yeah.
So perhaps if he has that confidence that being the starting 15 for his country, it might give him the confidence and then sort of
the focus
to kind of say, well, this is where I am now. I'm now a leader of this Irish team. I've, rather than
plus it's a more responsible.
I'm just coming in
position.
because there's someone injured, because Tommy Bowe's injured, I'll slot in, or because Dave Carney's injured, I'll come in.
I think there's an element of Zebo that I find very, very similar to what I see in Ian Madigan, in that they're both wonderful talents who sometimes have a difficulty
putting it all together
on the pitch. It's not that Zebo is better against weaker teams, or that he's poorer against stronger teams. It's just that he's less space against stronger teams, but sometimes he makes strong teams look very, very weak with a step and a go. I mean, we saw what he did against Wales.
He was the best.
And that's not a weak team.
He was Ireland's best back against Wales, I would have said.
Yeah. And that's not a weak team. I mean, they're not a weak team by any stretch of imagination.
And the other two matches that he played were Scotland and Italy.
Yeah.
So they are by nature, like, you can only play what's in front of you. Admittedly, they are Scotland and Italy, but at the same time, he made a great offload for the try.
But I think the other side of it is, and again, like Madigan would say, who drifted off on occasion against Connacht, would say, Zebo went sleepy walks against Italy at least once when they were going that way, and he seemed to be wandering off that direction for some unknown reason, kind of thing.
Well, something I was saying, maybe worth developing a little bit. It's a bit like giving what's his name, the English hooker, Hartley,
responsibility.
Giving Hartley the responsibility of being the captain seems to calm him down a bit. Giving Simon Zebo the responsibility of being fullback, because like being a winger, it's a real kind of just stand out at the end of the line there and we'll throw you the ball.
Yeah,
and
you can kind of dream away and drifting away.
And you do get wingers who come looking for a ball like Tommy Bowen on that, and running in through the centre on lines. But if you're a fullback, it's a responsibility. Like your last line of defence, you're taking the high balls, and like you just said, when you get the ball, you have a whole pitch. The fullback is always the one who makes the most metres, because when he catches the ball, he's got a long way to run. And we've said before, Rob Kearney tends to run for the pack to get a bit of shelter, whereas Zebo, his natural instinct is to go for goal basically. And if he breaks a line, he's got speed. He's got let's just hope he doesn't do any of those
Well,
things.
I'm surprised that he broke that record for Munster now.
Yeah,
I mean, I know
so young as well.
I'm surprised the record was so low.
Well,
When I looked,
I appreciate that.
Who's the record holder?
Anthony
Foley.
Foley, the slug.
seriously, when I looked at it, I thought it would be like Leinster's record is 49 or 53 tries. I can't remember one or the other, and it's 26 tries or 29 tries.
I'd say Anthony Foley wasn't far behind us.
I would say
Anthony Foley was the Heineken Cup. He's the highest Munster try scorer in the Heineken Cup. He probably still is. Well, yeah, he probably still is.
Yeah.
Because they were all off the back of a wall.
Don't forget, there was an awful lot of backs in Munster over the years. Like they kind of played 2 years, 3 years, and then they left. Or the centres I'm talking about, or full backs.
And Munster game wasn't based around
anything past 10.
No, I don't agree with that, because Munster did play. Munster's wide play was actually pretty good.
Scored some great tries.
Yeah, but their
team tries.
their red zone play was based around the fact that they had a horde of a pack.
Yeah.
And that they could drive you over. So a lot of their high try scores, I'd say below the below Horgan, and a lot of his tries were 5 metre specials, you know, because that was just the way they applied pressure and pressure and pressure. So you look at the amount of back rows that scored huge numbers of tries for Munster. You know, if you think back over the games you've seen yourself, it's just the nature of their
Don't
game.
forget also that they had Ronan O'Gara who
Yeah.
could kick the ball from pretty much anywhere inside the opposition
Yeah.
half. So, do you know what I mean, rather than going up the line for a driving maul, give Ronan the ball.
Classic Munster was an exercise in reward for pressure. Now, how that reward came, they didn't
Just
really
keep
care.
the scoreboard ticking over, and if you get in there, take the points.
So the fact that it did surprise me that the score was so low when you consider that he was, you know, the first choice winger for a long number of years on a very successful team. But then when you think about how that team actually played and how it functioned and what its modus operandi was, it's not actually that surprising. But if you look at the number of kind of back row forwards who have, we'll say, 20 tries for Munster, I'd say it's huge.
Probably few, all right.
Wallace, and
Foley.
Wallace, Foley, Leamy, Quinlan. You know, a lot of guys will have a lot of O'Connell, O'Callaghan, you know. So yeah, so I mean, yeah, he got that record, and that's you know, it won't do much good on Saturday. But how he does against
Better not.
no, because it won't. It doesn't matter. Records don't matter on Saturday. I mean, nothing matters. I've often said it before. When Leinster play Munster, it exists in its own sphere of reality.
I was going to say that you say it every time, Dave, and you're usually right. If Munster were last in the league and Leicester were first, or vice versa, it'd still, all bets would still be off coming into this fixture, and you just don't know how it's going to go. I've gone into Leicester and Munster fixtures, gone, we had this in the bag, and we got beaten, and I've gone in, gone, oh, we have the hope, and we've won. So,
do you remember
it's
when we were doing Blood, Sweat and Beers, Jason? We interviewed a couple of the Leinster players and Leinster coaches the week before the game in Croke Park, and how resolute they were. This is the first Leinster-Munster fixture we've gone into since the week before the game in Croke Park that I haven't been confident of Leinster winning.
It's a long
big
time.
words,
7
Dave.
years.
Big words.
But we've won most of those games if you think about it. You look back at it, we've won an awful lot. I mean, in 2009, could you imagine how many times we'd have beaten Munster since?
I'd say if we played, say, 14 times, I would imagine we probably won somewhere between 10 and 11 of those.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Whereas you'd think par for the course would be maybe 50-50 in an Interpro kind of thing.
Well, it probably was before that for 10 years.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
50.
So but this is the first time I haven't been that confident. There's just something about. Having said that, I would say that the Leinster team in training this week have been absolute pricks on the training pitch. I'd say it's been more out there. I really would.
But our season could have flowed if we don't win this game. I know there's still some matches that we could recover, but you're walking into 3 defeats in a row, losing to a team that's fourth behind you. Connacht just beat you. You know, Ulster could be snapping on your heels if they beat Connacht. There's too many variables there. You might end up having to go for an away semi-final.
Oh yeah.
It's very easy for a slip to become a slide.
Yeah.
You know, that's the problem. And we've seen it before in sports.
Winning is a habit.
Yeah.
So is losing.
We've seen it before. I mean, we said it before about Connacht back in the old days, how they were just used to losing, so that's what they did. You know, you don't want
It became acceptable.
Yeah, you don't
Let's not get used to it.
you don't want to become used to losing.
Well, we still haven't been beaten at home in the league
No.
so far.
Unfortunately, the Aviva is a
We're the
little
only
bit.
team in the league.
It's not as much of a fortress as it was for the first 5 or 6 years since, or 5 years, say, since it was opened. You know, we've lost. We were beaten by Munster there last year.
Yeah.
Beaten by Toulon. We were beaten by Northampton Saints. We weren't very impressive against Harlequins or Bath last season.
No. Yeah, we just got out of jail in the quarter final against Bath and Harlequins. How we got out of jail in that? It was a very poor game, and we won it
The
by
referee
points.
might have done us a
It's a
favour.
game that I've actually blanked from my memory.
Yeah, you were right.
But there's one other game that could be a potential banana skin. Is Scarlets play Cardiff.
Yeah.
Cardiff come good.
Cardiff are going to come good, guys.
Now the match is in Clonettley, but
Cardiff have something to play for, though.
yeah.
They're above the Ospreys, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
Well, the Ospreys are just
We're saying
a shadow of themselves.
What's happened to them? You know, their players, the roster is still pretty good.
Yeah, but they haven't been. They've all been away with Wales.
Yeah,
for a
they've all
lot.
been- and the one time
Bigger
they've been
is-
injured, yeah.
Bigger is the is the go-to guy there. You know, without him,
He's huge for them. He
It's
is huge for
us without Johnny Six. You know,
Dan Bigger for Ospreys reminds me of, do you remember the Little Britain sketch about Dennis Waterman? Right,
Oh, yeah.
soon, sing the team tune, act in the programme. That's Dan Bigger. He does everything. You have to expect him to come in, he clicks your ticket, then you got to buy a programme and he's there, and then you got to get a pint and he's pulling the pint for you, and then you see him run down to the pitch. He is Mr. Osprey.
Did you teach how to dance?
I'll tell you. He is. I mean, you could almost argue that if Johnny Sexton wasn't starting, if whoever the Lions coach is, we'd say, even if it's not Warren Gatton picked Bigger, you could see why. Because he is brilliant. He's a superb player. He's just
and he hasn't been there. This is the whole
and he
time.
hasn't been there. And he's a kind of guy who has the ability to drag the Ospreys through, just on the strength of his own personality and will to win.
And the other guy is Reece Webb, who's been coming back into,
Yeah.
you know, he back into fitness. He didn't quite make the Welsh. And Gareth Davis, the Scarlet guy, kept him out of the Welsh team.
Big battle between them last week.
Yeah.
Good battle as well.
Mm.
Yeah, it was a good match that.
Yeah. Which the Ospreys lost
Mm.
at home. Like losing at home, the Turks. Losing at home to the Turks is not one the Jacks want to be considering on a regular basis. So that's a real pride. That's like us and Munster. They're the two big teams in West Wales.
They're much closer. Like there's
Ospreys are fourth from bottom.
Yeah,
That's
unheard of.
bizarre.
Yeah,
It really is. It's goo-boo.
unprecedented.
Yeah, it really is.
And
It's
grotesque.
grotesque. But it's unheard of. It's the idea that, because Ospreys are a team, I've often said Ospreys' own self-image when Ospreys look at themselves in the mirror, they see themselves as a team that's going to challenge for a European title. Now maybe not in the last year or two, because whatever's happened in West Rugby, but the if you like, the developed image of the Osprey is one of a European winner.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got a situation where Ospreys are not going to qualify for Europe.
But they kind of have, if you look at them, they play in a Premiership's soccer ground. You know what I mean? Where presumably,
It's actually a municipal
It's a
ground.
municipal stadium.
but presumably everything is completely first class.
Oh yeah.
It's not sort of a couple of sheds hammered together like say down in Connacht or.
And it's not even like it's not even like they're doing a ground share where they're a tenant and they have to come in and hang up their own signs, on match day. It's all there for them because it's, as you say, it's a municipal stadium. They have equal rights to stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We have another question in from Alexander Clark. He wants to know, does prolonged exposure to kryptonite kill Superman or just damage him to a certain limit? And the answer is, as Superman's exposure to our yellow sun has increased, the effect of green kryptonite in particular on him has lessened to the point where, depending on which version of DC Comics you're reading, it really doesn't have any effect on him whatsoever anymore. Okay, next question.
We have one about the NFL.
Yes, we do, actually. Talking about all things American. Our thoughts on the Top Tackle asks, our thoughts on the new IRFU head of athletic performance, that's Nick Winkelman, and science, Nick Winkelman. What will he bring from the NFL? For those who don't know, Nick Winkelman was a senior member of a company called Exos.
You just like saying his name, don't you?
Winkelman. No, and he also ran for a number of years, I think 6 or 7 years, the NFL Combine, which is basically, how would you describe it? Would you describe it as a second chance training camp? Or is it more than that?
No, it's where all of the kids that don't make it in the
that's what I
draft
mean. Yeah, that's what I mean.
go to have a tryout, and all the scouts from the NFL franchises go to watch them. And there's probably, I think there's quite a few combines in different regions.
So that's what I mean in terms of it's a second chance for the guys who don't make the first cut of the draft.
Yes, it was a great documentary on that AIB were sponsoring of a GA player from Mayo, and I think it was called The Toughest.
Oh yeah.
And anyway, this GA player went over to this sort of swap his lifestyle with him. So they brought an NFL guy over to train with this guy's local club in Mayo. Now they were going to do it for a week. So
It's Aidan O'Brien who's quite
Aidan O'Brien, yeah. So Aidan O'Brien played in the All Ireland final. So he went over and he tried out for the combine, while the American guy was kind of a retired NFL player. He came over and played with his club for a week. But what he does is he gets kids that are going from college and tries to get them super fit when they're trying out in the combines. But he took a few training sessions for the GA, the Mayo GA team, and what he was doing was first of all the GA lads couldn't get over the footwork that, even though they're huge men in American football, the amount of footwork that they do, because they have to try and make 1 metre or 1 yard each time they get, you know, rather than just plough into someone. There's guys as equally as big as going to plough back into them, so they have to
You're trying to take it on your own terms.
exactly and try to get around them. But that was the thing that both the GA person that went to the States and all of the guys that your man was training, was that the footwork that the big guys can have, and this is predominantly what the American footballers do. So maybe that's something that he can bring into.
I'd say that Mayo guy would have been ideally placed to find out as an NFL combine as good as a Massey Ferguson.
The other thing is, he's athletic. He's athletic performance and science, which is kind of quite an interesting title, because it means that, I mean, one thing we've always had to had to do in Irish rugby because of our restricted numbers is extract maximum benefit from, you know, minimum input, a minimal amount of input. So obviously putting bigger influence on the scientific approach is something that we need to do, obviously, to make our fewer players fitter for longer. You know, so it'd be interesting to see how he goes. I hope he's successful.
Yeah,
I think it's a good hire.
but I mean, like even thinking back a number of years ago when they had what was that doctor that he used to be
Liam Hennessy.
Liam Hennessy, like he was involved with you know, Bayern Munich and a few other notable professional sports teams as
Some
well.
would say he was too involved.
Well, maybe so, but
And it didn't really work out for Ireland in 2007, for example. He was,
yeah, he might have become a little bit too big for his boots.
but he was certainly very successful for us, because he was the first, because he was Eddie O'Sullivan's kind of detail-driven
But
approach.
like,
He was the medical wing of that, if you like.
Dave, like, you know, Brian O'Driscoll played for 15 years. Paul O'Connor played for
Yeah,
12 or
that's the
13.
point, yeah.
Gordon
Yeah.
Darcy played. Like, all these guys have very long careers, you know. And okay, there are going to be some guys that are kind of cut short. They just happen to pick up a very bad injury. I'm thinking of someone like, I don't know, say Dennis Leamy, who retired before his time. But there's still a huge number of Irish internationals who've retired in their
Here's something to
30s.
think about, right? Paul, you mentioned those three guys. What do those three guys have in common?
We're brilliant.
No, they were brilliant. They all had an injury in the middle, towards the end of the middle of their careers,
They broke it up.
that broke up. They gave them a year off to a certain extent, and there were injuries that were entirely healable because there were breaks and stuff like that.
And it made them work so hard to get back.
And now you look at New Zealand players and Australian players who are taking, you know, a year
Very
and
good.
9 months off towards the end of the middle of their careers. You're wondering, is there an appliance of science that New Zealand or the Antipodeans have picked up from seeing what's happened to the Irish players? I wonder.
Maybe so, yeah.
Because I mean, those are guys who, I mean, if you think about it, to get 20 or 30 caps when we were growing up, like, even in our 20s, guys who get 20 and 30 caps for Ireland were amongst the greybeards of Irish rugby in terms of how long they lasted. And now we've got multiple Centurion caps owners. The idea of which would have been patently ridiculous when we were growing up. And that's the scientific approach that has extended these guys' careers without seeming to. Well, that's the question. Has it damaged their long-term health?
We don't know.
Well, we don't know. So maybe that's another string to this chap's bow, to make sure that yes, we extend their careers, but we also don't shorten their after-career opportunities.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to find out.
It will.
Alright, boys, thanks as ever, and thanks a million for watching. Cheers.